Nancy to introduce our speaker of today. Nancy?
So today we have Mike Stair with us. He is the co-owner of Orthopedics Physical Therapy. He got into physical therapy as a career after being injured with a football injury when he was 17 and requiring physical therapy. He has several degrees, like I can't even pronounce some of them. That he studied kinesiology, is that how you pronounce it?
Kinesiology.
Kinesiology and biomechanics at University of Illinois. Then he became a personal trainer. And then he got his master's degree at BU and a doctorate from MGH. And after a 2-year fellowship at the Institute of Orthopedics Manual Therapy, then he became a certified strength and conditioning specialist and also a board certified nutritionist. So in reading your bio, Mike, it was interesting to me as to your philosophy is heal the whole body, not just the one part. So I'll let you explain your program, but I was very impressed with it. And I really do buy into that. If one part's not working, there's a reason. So
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate the intro, and I love being here, and I appreciate the energy of the group too. It's really neat to be a guest here. I'm going to share my screen, and I've done this several times, but just give me a heads up if anything's not looking right from your end. So one of the key things I like to do, I've been very fortunate that I get to travel across the country pre-COVID and teach courses for people for other clinicians and for physical therapists, for personal trainers, all across different walks of life. And what I decided to do 2 years ago is that rather than just teaching clinicians, I wanted to reach out into the community a little bit more because one thing I'm noticing is that there's a lot of misinformation about health and fitness, and fitness professionals have had a hard time communicating that. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if we took our background as clinicians, as trainers, as nutritionists, and shared it with the general population? So that's one of the main reasons I'm here. And I want to give you guys some of the best information I've been able to glean over the years pertaining to how to stay fit as you get approach to 50s and beyond. So I'm going to leave you guys with some really key solutions. A little bit more background about me. My main reason for staying healthy and fit is that I want to scare boys away. These are my 3 daughters, and my oldest, Bella, is just about to turn 15. Some people that haven't seen her in a while are wondering if that's Danielle, my wife, but so it's getting a little weird. But she's turned 15. Maddie in the middle there she's turning 13 in a few months. And Allie, the little one, is just about to turn 9. So great kids. Danielle in the middle is a family nurse practitioner. So it's also the 15th anniversary of when I started Spectrum Fitness Consulting. I was working as a physical therapist and found that there was a huge void in the continuum of healthcare. Many people were coming to me getting injured, trying to get healthy. Many people who wanted to get healthy were having a hard time doing it. They didn't know what to do, especially given their unique injuries or conditions. So I thought, would it be great if we had physical therapists, personal trainers, and nutritionists working with people before or after they had injuries instead of just waiting them to come to the clinic. So that was just a little idea I had 15 years ago. We have now assembled an amazing team. We were Small Business of the Year, where we formed up in Beverly, and then nationally we're runner-up for Small Business of the Year. We also decided that we wanted to take this model down to next to our clinic in Burlington, who was looking for a new space. So we just went across the street to Bedford and have now started building up that team. So just wonderful people who, as Nancy mentioned, we try to look at people not trying to build muscles or not trying to lose fat, but trying to figure out how they function as a unit and not just compartmentalize them to orthopedics or just to neurology or just to cardiac issues, but putting them all together. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is we're the only studio in the country that has board certified nutritionists working along with fellowship trained doctors of physical therapy, also athletic trainers and personal trainers. This is my other group. I have been working with this practice for 18 years, and 2 years ago purchased them. The Orthopedics Plus has been in Burlington. They were there for 30 years, and then I took ownership and moved it over to Bedford. And we also have a clinic that's been up here for about 25 years in Beverly too. So just wonderful, great clinicians, and we all work together as one big team. And as I mentioned, prior to COVID, I had a chance to travel over the country teaching courses, but it really made me more interested in wanting to reach out to the community instead of just to the clinicians. One thing I also want to give you guys today, I've listened to presentations before, and I hate getting all this new information and it leaves me when I leave the presentation. So I wrote this book for my parents who live in Arizona and Chicago. And I decided to clean it up a little bit and make it a book that I give out to people when I get a chance to speak. So if you want a copy of this, just put your email in the chat. I'll make a copy of it before I sign off, and I'll make sure you get a copy by the end of the week. It's just something you can get through email. And it gives you some pretty good synopsis about what you should do to start on a proper health plan. So one key thing, I don't want to lecture you guys about how important health and fitness is, because I think that's where a lot of health professionals are missing the mark. But I do want to share with you some pretty interesting insights before I get into some solutions. This is from the research of Walter Willett at Harvard University, who's an epidemiologist there. And he found that based on his analysis, if you combine the effects of proper diet, exercise, and not smoking, combined, you could prevent 80% of heart disease, 90% of diabetes, and 70% of cancers. So I think that's pretty profound. And I think that helps frame what we're trying to talk about today. And of course, we all want to perform better, feel better, and look better too. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, when you consider all these wonderful benefits of exercise, it's been given the moniker as the magic pill. And just a quick synopsis, it helps prevent the loss of muscle, reduce our risk of falls, improve function, reduce pain, improve cognitive function, improve immunity, and reduce a multitude of diseases. So given that it's the magic pill, there's something wrong with this prescription. And that's the elephant in the room that I think fitness professionals and health professionals are missing. So I want to ask you guys, given that there are so many wonderful things that exercise bestows upon us, what are the reasons that we don't do it? So, you can just unmute yourself and just, shout it out. I'd love to hear what your responses are. What are the problems that people have with the prescription of exercise? Why don't people do it?
Scheduling
Fear.
Time, I heard. Yep.
I was going to say fear of injury.
Injury. Yep. Anything else?
I think it's boring.
Boring.
It's
Totally.
boring. Totally
Yep.
boring.
Absolutely. Yep. What else?
Lack of motivation if you're by yourself.
Motivation. Okay. So now I've asked this question to I estimate at least 20,000 people over the last 20 years since I have been talking to people about this. And I'm fascinated by this because I asked the same question to physicians, to physical therapists, fitness professionals. And that's exactly everything you just said is exactly what I hear all the time. There's 4 main problems, and that's what I want to speak to you guys about and give you some solutions regarding. These are what I call the Mike factors: motivation, injuries, knowledge, so knowing what to do or how to do it. So when you mentioned that, it's boring, a lot of the reasons it's boring is because we're not sure what to do to match our interests, our abilities. how to know how much to do, all those factors, and efficiency or time. If you can solve these 4 things, there's nothing standing in the way of getting tremendous results that I'll show you are possible. So that's really what I want to talk to you about, is give you a glimpse as to how you can solve these Mike factors. That's what healthcare professionals, that's what fitness professionals be talking about. Not so much, pounding in our heads why it's important, but showing how we can overcome the obstacles. So the number one factor that we're finding that tends to correlate with whether people stay with exercise for the long term is knowing what to do. Hopefully this is not in the Bedford school system, but knowledge is quite important. In fact, Medina Miraplex proved that the more people understood what to do and exactly how to do it, the more likely they're going to stay with an exercise program. And I'm going to show you why this is so important. And again, I'm going to ask you guys a question, and then you can unmute yourselves and give me the answer here. But here's the question, because this will prove why knowledge is so important. What one type of exercise will simultaneously improve your heart function, your strength, your mobility, your function in day-to-day life, your insulin sensitivity, your metabolism, your bone density, immunity, as well as decrease your risk of fat, gaining body fat, decrease injuries, decrease falls, blood pressure, stress, pain, cholesterol, and disease risk. And we're talking about cancer, diabetes, arthritis, heart disease, a whole host of diseases.
Walking.
What one type of exercise? What do you guys think?
Walking.
Walking? Good. Any
Strength
other
work.
guesses? Strength training?
Walking away from the refrigerator.
Yes, walking away from the refrigerator and pushing away the table, right? Both, cardio and strength training. Okay, so again, same thing. I've asked this question over 20,000 people, and every single time there has not been one exception. The first answer that we hear is walking. This is also coming from physicians, also coming from physical therapists or so. But the evidence is really strong on this. Walking is not very effective for weight loss. There was one study in the journal Obesity looked at 786 overweight folks who were on a walking program, 60 minutes a day, 6 days a week for an entire year. The average fat loss, 3.5 pounds. It hasn't been shown to reduce risk of falls or improve bone density either. But the studies have shown very clearly is that resistance training is far more effective for all of these variables here. And that makes a lot of sense. In fact, we have so much data on this that directly compares aerobic training to resistance training. It's not even debated anymore in the circles of research. The profound effects from things not just getting strong, but on diabetes, on heart disease, on cancer is very, very clear. In fact, there is now a group of researchers that have shown that resistance training is the most effective standalone exercise strategy to improve overall health for older adults. It should be the future guidelines for how to treat those as they're aging. And this isn't just, again, 1 or 2 studies. We're talking about decades of research is showing this. Now, what happens as we age, starting in our 40s, studies show that we'll lose about 8% of our muscle mass every decade. Now, by the time you get to your 70s, that rate increases to about 15% loss per decade. Now, the question is, why does this happen? People have wrongly assumed that age is causing this loss in muscle. But what the evidence is very clear on is not age, it's the lack of tension that we apply to our muscles as we age. Just to give you some, basic proof on this that goes beyond what Roblowski and studies have shown. What happened to astronauts when they went in gravity-eliminated environments in the early phases of space travel? They came back down to Earth, in spite of being in the peak of their health and their fitness, decimated. They couldn't do basic functions like walk or go up and down stairs. That proves that it was the lack of gravity, the lack of stimulus to the muscle that caused atrophy, not aging. And we have a lot of evidence of this, and it just keeps piling in. There's examples of people who were studied for 40 years from their 40s to their 80s, able to retain their strength and their muscle mass if they did the right type of strength training. And you can reverse this. From 70 to 80 years old, they've found that their response to strength training is similar to the response that 40-year-olds have. they can find that improved strength is common even in those who are older than 80. The trick, though, is that they have to have the right stimulus plus the right nutrition. And one of the problems we're seeing is, and the biggest action items you can take from this right now, is do resistance training, but also make sure you have enough protein and you have adequate vitamin D levels. Those are probably the most important things. Now, I want to show you an example of this, because a lot of people say to me, like, well, my knees hurt too much, or I'm too weak to do a lot of basic exercises that don't require machines at the gym, and I can't go to the gym now. Well, I'll show you a neat example, and you don't have to use this apparatus, but think of the concept. This is a gentleman who was falling on a week-to-week basis. He was unable to get on and off the ground. So what we did is he weighed 190 pounds. We had him hold on to an apparatus that had 60 pounds of tension on it. So now that reduced the effort that he had to lift. Instead of his legs having to lift 190 pounds, they only had to lift 130 pounds. It's kind of like being in water. It reduces the effect of gravity so that over time, what do you think we're going to do to the weight as he gets stronger?
Reduce it.
Yes, we're actually going to reduce it so that now he starts lifting a greater percentage of his body weight. So I want to show you this in another simple example. Now, this is him at 86 years old. He started at a very high level, meaning easy level, a high surface, trying to do push-ups off his bureau at home. And then we found inch by inch lower surfaces until about 8 months later, he's down to something that's about the height of a coffee table. And he's a tall guy, he's 6'3", so that's a lot of stability that he needs. And this is great for building up core stability, arm strength. So we were pretty impressed. This is a guy who could barely get off the floor before, and now he's doing push-ups off of an ottoman at home. But this is the beginning. Let me show you what ends up happening. Fast forward 4 years later. He's 89 years old here. In that time frame, he has not fallen once. He can now, with just his fingertip holding on there, he's just doing that for confidence, go easily on and off the ground with his full body weight. And he hadn't been able to do this since he was 30 years old. Not only can we get him down to the ground, but over a steady acclimation of over 4 years, we got him to be able to do a push-up off the ground. In fact, after we progressed, by the time he was 90, he hit his record of being able to do 7 push-ups. This is at 90 years old. He hadn't done that since he was 30. So we show this so people understand that this is not just theory. This is actually stuff that we're seeing all the time. In fact, Speechly showed that the #1 factor that was related to your ability to be independent with day-to-day activities, walking and balance, is actually strength. It's like being able to read a book. The alphabet has to start first. Strength is the foundation upon which you build these abilities. In fact, the WHO has shown this for decades. When they looked at different exercise abilities of large populations, those who did resistance training more than twice a week had a 23% lower risk of death and a 34% lower risk of cancer. In contrast, people who did aerobics 150 minutes a week had a 12% lower risk of death and no lower risk of cancer. So if you could only choose one, because it's boring as heck, you don't have much time, and you need to be able to modify it so that it adapts to your abilities and where you can do it, what one option would you choose based on this evidence? Clearly, we're seeing that resistance training is the best option here. Now, if you're lucky, now the best thing is to be able to do both. If you do both, then you have even better outcomes. And studies have shown that you will have a lower risk of dying prematurely if you stay stronger. And here's some examples of this happening. So we have a lot of cool cases of this happening. This is a gentleman who started strength training in his late 60s and a year later completely transformed his body. Now, for those trying to improve bone density, this is probably the most important thing. We know evidence shows that you can do it, but where people are off on this is that they think resistance training is turning up the level on the bike. or walking when you have weights in your hands. The studies that show that how we get our bones strong is the load has to be so heavy that you can barely do it more than 6 to 12 times in one episode. You need to take a break in between sets. And so it's a lot different than what most people are doing. High reps, low weight. That's the opposite of what we need to do. And studies are showing that walking actually does not improve bone density. So here's a cool example of somebody who transitioned from 6 days a week of aerobic classes to 3 days a week of resistance training. You can see that she clearly lost weight and got stronger. In fact, this is what her regimen looked like to help reduce her knee pain. By getting her hips stronger and her bones more dense, we're able to help things beyond just body composition, but also improve her knee health. Now, a lot of people are confused and say, well, Mike, I need to do cardio too. Well, here's the good news. Resistance training has proven to be cardiovascular training as well. We've had decades of evidence showing that all the markers for heart function is improved by doing resistance training. What's most notable is that resistance training is either as effective or more effective for reducing your risk of heart attack. So I have a whole article that I've done on this. If you ever want to read that, it's on my website, spectrumfit.net, and just look up cardio and you'll see the evidence on that. One gentleman, by using that approach, we were able to get his triglycerides down from 221 to 71, just with proper training. So a lot of people also are confused about how to help lose body fat. Now, when you're looking at exercise and you're looking at whether you should do aerobics or resistance training, again, because you might find it boring, you don't have time, or maybe your knees can't tolerate a lot of activity. Study after study after study shows that resistance training is more effective than aerobic training comparatively for fat loss. Here's a neat example again. A patient who had 2 bad knees was had a surgery date to get her knees replaced. She saw us for prehab and she lost a boatload of weight. Once she lost all the weight, she actually canceled her knee replacements. And we see this happen many, many times. So you guys mentioned time was a big issue. I think the real issue is the perception of how much time we need. I want to show you some examples of people who exercise less than 3 hours a week. Sarah, we were able to get her to lose a lot of body fat, but also more importantly is get stronger. This is another case of somebody that saw us pre-hip replacement. By losing weight, she was able to avoid the hip replacement. But the neat thing is that she's a busy person. We got this done in less than 3 hours a week. Here's my big secret. It's not how much time you spend, it's the quality of time that you spend. For heart, bone density, strength, and metabolic changes, studies show it's not correlated to how much time you spend exercising, but the quality of the exercise. Now, injuries is another big thing. People have pain in their backs and do ab exercises. They have pain in their knees, but studies show that addressing the hips and the ankle actually helps the knee the most. And they have rotator cuff issues. And studies show that addressing posture and shoulder blade strength is most important. Now, here's the key thing. We all have to deal with this, right? We all have to deal with stairs. And we all have to deal with getting off the floor. But if those are causing pain, what do? Well, let me show you an example of Susan. She had some pretty severe respiratory disease and was using a walker in most day-to-day life. And this is based on some studies that showed if you show people results quickly, they're able to see a lot of function improve a lot quicker. It gets them more motivated. So I'll show you this example. This is Susan who couldn't get on and off a chair. And she was only able to get up. She's about 5 foot, 200 pounds. Now what we did is we changed the environment. We had her hold on to 60 pounds, which reduced load, and then she was able to come up. Over time, we gave her 50 pounds, 40 pounds, 30 pounds, and then nothing. And this is where she got to. This is her using no weight about 3 months later, able to get on and off a chair on her own power. She ended up losing 30 more pounds and then was able to do gym workouts 5 days a week and didn't have to deal with using a walker. And then wrap things up, the final thing is motivation. If you see results, that's the most motivating thing. If you have accountability, that helps you stick with it. And if you understand that will is something that you can improve with skill, then it gives you the notion that it's not will that's the problem. It's just you don't have the skills or the tools yet. But when you see results, that tends to give you those strategies. Some quick studies on this show that if you think about your goals, people will be successful 43% of the time. But when you write them down and have to report to somebody on a weekly basis, you're successful 76% of the time. And the evidence keeps showing that. So what we try to tell people is they need coaching. They don't need just more programs and more equipment. And that's what the research keeps showing on this. Studies after studies and comments after comments keep saying that that's valuable. So I want to wrap up answering some questions that I typically get about COVID and exercise right now, and then we'll see if there's any other questions. This is what the evidence is coming in when it pertains to exercise. The second biggest factor related to COVID, severe COVID symptoms of death, other than age, is actually obesity. Vitamin D deficiency is correlated with increased risk of getting COVID. And exercise has been shown to significantly improve the immune system. And it's also correlated inversely with your likelihood of being hospitalized to COVID. So that is a really important thing that needs to be emphasized that's coming out of the literature. Some other things that, again, I don't own a gym. I don't have any stake in this. This is just what studies are showing. Study after study is showing that the likelihood of having COVID from going to a gym is incredibly low in the 0.00 percentage. This is based on mass government data, as well as from some randomized control studies in Europe as well. So the incidence is quite low, actually, which is good. Also, I wrote an entire series on masks and whether it's safe or not. The summary of that is that they don't have any negative impact on exercise or health while wearing them, which is good. So you can check that out also on the blog. So as I mentioned, is that, our little studio is way different than a gym. It's kind of like comparing your own private library to the New York Public Library. Way, way different. But the biggest difference is in the philosophy. We're like a school. We have teachers with a curriculum, and we teach and hold kids accountable and individualize it to their grade level and their abilities. A gym is like a library. It has all the books. You wouldn't tell a kid to go to a library just to get smart, right? They need support and they need instruction. So just like us. We've been fortunate to be designated an essential provider, so we are able to be operational. This is essentially all the data about how we're keeping things clean for our patients and safe for our clients. So again, if you guys want that free book, you can just put that in the chat. If you'd like to have a free consultation, I'd be more than happy to offer that to you. If you guys want to just meet for free and learn a little bit more about your fitness and tell us about your needs, be more than happy to help. So you can put that in on the chat, just a way for me to get a hold of you best, and I'll copy that down and reach out. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope you guys are staying safe, and hopefully you can take action on this, because I think it'll help out the community and us as individuals deal with the situation as best as possible. So thank you all, and I'll stick around if you guys have any questions.